It's Monday. Hope everybody had a good weekend. Things just go whackety whack on Monday. All right. So, for those of you who missed the test, I am putting the code in the chat right now. I think there's about 5 of you. All right, it's Lorax26. And yes, I prefer that you do the test during class time. If you can't do it during class time, you need to do it during tutorials. And tutorial is 1:30 to 2 on Tuesdays and Fridays. So if you are present now and you missed the test, please uh, log into that now. And that's No. Okay, I've got a couple of new people. So the new folks, you don't take the test yet because you don't even know what the test is on. So, but I would like you to go back and look at what has been missed and meet new folks, meet me in tutorial tomorrow at 1:30 and we'll talk about what you need to do and what you don't need to do. All right. Couple of people. Okay, so I got 2 new people, and it already put a 0 for you too. You didn't even do anything yet. So yes, for some reason, instead of even though you've submitted something, there's a 0 under there. I don't know why, but that'll be taken care of. So who do we need? Gabriel, um, Elizabeth, Ivani, um, Amari, and Jatavius, and Harper. If you are present, okay, Amari, Ronnie, you're here. Ch Chitavius, you're here. Uh, what else did I say? All right, so you all need to take the test now. The rest of you, please look at Organization of Life in Canvas, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. All right, so if it's giving you a 0, don't worry about it. And you know you've submitted. Who is it? Tell me that. Elizabeth. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with that, but you are missing interdis Elizabeth, you are missing interdisciplinary teamwork. So that one is missing. So
I remember for that one, the interdisciplinary work or whatever, I had done the attempt and I turned it in, but you gave me a second attempt. I can't really remember why.
okay.
So I think it graded the second attempt that didn't have the work on it. And I think that's what it was. Because I remember vividly doing the assignment and then turning it in.
First one, but on this, we had two things for that one because right now I'm looking at it and there's no submission at all. For the part 2, you might be talking about the part 1. So there was a part 2 to that where you had to go back and look at, there was 5 questions. So that one is missing. Um, so that's the issue there. I took out the 0 that it gave. For some reason, folks, it's giving folks a 0, and it's not even doing it for everybody for Tragedy of the Commons. Or you've submitted it, but for some reason there's a 0 in there. So that will disappear because you've submitted. This one, yeah, I have a submission and a grade for part 1, but nothing for part 2. Okay. So please take a look at that and resubmit if you can. Let me see if you can. Okay. Nope. Yes. No. I have to open that up. is, wow, time flies. We are in the last week of August already. Okay, I'm going to open this up till September. It is okay. That might be you might have tried to resubmit it and it was closed, but it's open now. Okay, I have changed the date on that one. Okay. All right. That's that. So hopefully, let me check all the people who anybody else need to come in. Like I said, it's Monday. Mondays are lovely days. All right, so again, all right, I got everybody in who's needed to get in. Okay, that's fine. After the test is good, test first and then resubmit. And if you have it, you shouldn't have to do it. You just need to submit it. So that, folks, make sure you always save your work for, especially for occasions like this where you know you did it and um, it just for some reason isn't showing up in the box. All right, so I should have at least 4 people testing. I see 2. Another person coming in. All right, we are growing. We are growing. We are growing. Uh, all right, so again, we are in Canvas. We are looking at organization of life. And like I said before, that should not be not terribly new to you. And while I have this screen up, I'm going to do attendance. Okay. And forgot who it was who told me they were on there. Okay. All righty. Okay. If it's all possible, could you make sure your cameras are on? I got one person who gave me a reason. Everybody else, if you didn't give me a reason, your camera should be on. Okay. Folks who are new, your cameras should be on. That is policy. We do have focus mode, so I see you, but everybody else doesn't see you. They'll see your name, so they'll know you're here, but your camera should be on so that I know you're here. Alrighty, good, good, good. All right, so like I said, I'm going to go ahead and whew, check attendance while I have this up, and then we'll go from there. Again, if you missed the test on Thursday, please, please, please take the test now. The Lorax 26 is the code. Open house is tomorrow. Hopefully you will invite your parents and yourself to participate in that. And it's really not, it's just to introduce them to the course that you're taking. It's really not a discussion time. So they need to be aware that um, if there's any long questions about grades and assignment, that needs to be addressed either by email or a separate appointment. We are given 2 minutes to introduce the class, and so that's all that will happen tomorrow. Alrighty, 29. Which means 3. Oh, okay. I have 2 different names. So let me ask this question real quick. Smart Jobs. Alright, Keely, look like you're in and out again. Let's go to this one. You still don't have audio. Okay. What to tell you on that one? Okay. All right, I do need to check tragedy of the comments for everybody. So that should be, unless you turn something in late, everything else should be up to date. Sorry. They are. Everything should be syncing with Infinite Campus, so you should be able to look at all of the graded assignments in Infinite Campus. As far as I can tell that you're checking, when you check the vault, it gives you an average, class average, but it doesn't list all the individual assignments. That you'll have to see in Infinite Campus. All right, let's look at our organization of life. So we are starting a new unit. We are going to be looking at ecological biomes. And with that, we will um, also work towards a, a project. So I'll tell you more about that when we get closer to it. But this unit does, we start talking about ecological systems. We will start talking about ecological relationships, and there'll be a project that you will have to do. Okay, so let me get this up. I think I kind of went through this briefly with you the other day, but it's Monday. It was hot over the weekend. It just ridiculously hot. All right, organization of life. All right, and Keely, I don't know if you can hear me, but I guess you could see what's up. Can you still not hear? Still have no audio? I guess. Okay. Um, so when we're looking at things, all living things are made of cell. That's a given, and that's something that we need to always remember, that all living things are made of cells. To get to the cell, if you did biology, we know that things start off, everything on the planet that is made up of atoms, and you put atoms join themselves together and they form molecules, and molecules get to be bigger molecules, and the molecules that we need are the macromolecules, which are carbohydrates, nucleic acids, proteins, and lipids. So those are the macromolecules that are essential for life, but they come with a hierarchy. All of this brings us up to a cell. So the cell is the basic unit of function for all living things. So then we put the cell together, and we have organelles. All these words sound the same. Organelles are the tiny little organs that are inside each cell. And all of those little organelles need to function like the organs in your body in order for the cell to function. Okay. And again, if you remember from biology, that you have things like the nucleus where the DNA is housed. You have mitochondria, which is your energy factory. You have ribosomes, which make your proteins, and a bunch of other little organelles, including the cell membrane, which is like your skin, which holds everything together. So we have this subcellular level. Then we have the cell itself. And there are some organisms that are only one cell big, and those are unicellular. But most of what we're going to look at are multicellular organisms. Okay, so and they're still talking about subcellular. So cells make tissues, tissues work together to make organs, and organ systems work together to make an organism. And that's where we start for that's where we start for environmental science. We start with the organism, the individual organism. Okay, so our study starts here. And then we have an organism is one kind of something. We call it one species. It functions as a reproducible individual. And then we have a group of that same kind. So they give you the example of an elephant. And the elephant by itself is an organism. A group of elephants is a population of just elephants. But we know that elephants don't live by themselves. So then we take that elephant and we put it with a group of other organisms like the gazelle and the bird that live in the same place. We're always going to be looking at things in a location. So if they live in the same place, they're a community. Okay, so we have different organisms in the same community. Up to this point, we've only been looking at the living things. From here on out, we're going to include non-living things. And so the terms that you need to be aware of are excuse me, talking too fast. Biotic, this word right here, biotic, and abiotic factors. Biotic factors are all the living things, and abiotic factors are all the non-living things. Because again, we are on this planet, we are in our community, but we are not just a bunch of living things in a space. In order for us to live and exist, we have to have air, water, weather conditions, in addition to all the other little animals, the little birds and ants and worms and trees and all that sort of thing that live in our community. Added to our community is the ground, the air, the sun, the water. All of that makes up our ecosystem. Okay. All right. And then like again, they're pointing out, for example, we started with the elephant. So we're staying with the elephant and we're saying that the elephant lives in the grassland. So we're talking about the grass, the water, but in addition to that, the gazelle, the birds, and other things that are important to this particular area. Okay. And then so we've been looking at that as say in the African desert, but that African desert is not the only thing in the area. If you expand further out into Africa, you have other conditions going on. So those are biomes. So biomes can have several ecosystems in them. Okay, and biomes are categorized by their climate and geographical location. So we're going to look at what that means. And then each of these biomes all over the planet are part of a larger things called the planet. So we call that the ecosphere or the biosphere, which is the whole planet. And that, again, the whole planet includes abiotic and biotic factors. All right. So that's a brief summary. Then they did it for you again here in this picture. So here they started with the atom. They went all the way up to where we just started from. So we got our organism. In this case, it's not an elephant, it's a lion. And again, from biology, you learn that things are classified according to a system of classification, and we end up with a specific name called a species name. So in this case, his genus and species name is Pantheus leo. So Pantheus leo is the lion and by himself. And then if there's a group of lions, they're a pride and they are population. And then you take that population of lions and they live with zebras and hyenas and all those other organisms in a community. And then that community lives in if you think of the Lion King out there on the savannah, and so you have the savanna itself, the plants that grow there, the water that grows there, the sunshine, the air, all of that makes up that type of ecosystem. Their ecosystem is not like our ecosystem. We live in a totally different climate with totally different types of trees, totally different organisms that live in our ecosystem. So ecosystems are different according to where they're located. And then you put all these ecosystems together and they live on the planet. Okay, this picture skipped over biome, but we are going to be looking at biomes in particular. All right. I'm going to let him.
than that. I mean, understanding how an organism goes about its internal business is great, but it doesn't tell us much about its place in our world. For that, we need ecology, the study of the rules of engagement for all of us Earthlings. Ecology seeks to explain why the world looks and acts the way that it does, why the South Pole looks different from the Congo, and why there are mosquitoes all over the place while black rhinos are practically extinct. The short answer to this question is because the world is crammed with things, both animate and not, that have been interacting with each other all the time, every day since life on this planet began. The even shorter answer is that all life and all of these things interacting with each other depend on just two things. Try to guess what they are. In the meantime, get ready because Crash Course Biology is taking its final voyage outside the body and into the entire world. In a way, you could think of all living things, great white sharks, pond scum, potato plants, as molecules that react with each other. Each one of us organisms is pretty piddling in the scheme of things, just like a single oxygen molecule, which we need to make ATP to fuel our bodies, but it can't get much done by itself. But if you get a million oxygen molecules together with some other types of molecules, suddenly they're unleashing a googajillion megawatts of ATP power to animate the bag of meat that is you. The same principle applies to organisms. As you put individual organisms together, they can interact with each other in their environments to create something larger than the sum of its parts. And just as every organism has a hierarchy of biological systems, from molecules to organelles to cells to tissues to organs, so too does Earth have tiers of ecological order. Like when a bunch of members of the species are together in a certain area and they interact pretty often, you've got a population. Population ecologists study why populations grow or shrink over time, depending on where they are. When two or more populations of different species live together, we call that a community. You can think of an ecological community as Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, but with the people in the neighborhood eating each other sometimes. Because that's what species do when they live together. They interact. Sometimes that means predation, sometimes cooperation, and sometimes competition for resources like food and water and living space. So a community ecologist studies how the interactions between community members and their environment affect how many of each species there are within a community. Another level up from communities are ecosystems, which are made up of groups of organisms in a specific area and the non-living parts of their environment, like soil and water and air. If you take a bunch of living things and plop them down in one place that has a specific mix of climate and soil chemistry and topography, that's gonna make up one kind of ecosystem. But you put them down in a completely different place, and they're gonna work in completely different ways to form a completely different ecosystem. Ecosystem ecology specifically explores how energy and materials flow through an ecosystem and how the physical environment impacts the stuff living there. Now, a lot of people get ecosystems confused with the next step up, which is biomes. A biome, however, is where organisms have evolved similar techniques to adapt to a general set of conditions. For example, a grassland is a kind of biome. There are scores of different grassland ecosystems all over the globe, but the organisms in each one have made similar evolutionary concessions to all the conditions that grasslands share. Like your hot summers and your cold winters, and not too much rain, but more rain than you'd find in a desert biome. Other biomes include tropical rainforests, tundra deserts, and oceans. The only level above the biome is the biosphere, which includes the atmosphere and the whole Earth and everything that gets used by anything that's alive. So, why do all of these many levels of ecological...
Okay. What they do with this Mr. Wonderful here is he's part of a bigger video, so they took a clip out of that video. So that's why he stopped abruptly right there. But we are going to continue. I mean, they could have continued the whole thing, but we are going to look at biomes in particular. We're going to look at the particular organisms that exist in those biomes. So that's where your project will come into play. Alrighty. So I want you to take a few minutes to work on this based on, so you might need to come back up here, look at the vocabulary, and see if you can drag and drop um, these words at the bottom into the spaces up top. So the portion of the earth and atmosphere where life exists. Where would that be? Let's drag that up there and see if that's the right one. They kind of started backwards. Okay, so you want to take a minute to drag and drop, and then it'll keep as you get one correct, put a check the check mark, and it'll go on to the next question. Okay. Along with their living things and their environment. All right, all right, so I'm gonna stop doing all of these for you. I'm gonna give you a minute to do those. Check back with you in a minute. Once you finish that, we're going on to, come on. There we go. My computer is so slow sometimes. All right, so we are going to start. And look at here, we're starting in Georgia. Okay, so we're going to do this as well. And this is probably the continuation of what he was talking about before, but we are going to look at this, and in particular, this map. So play with the words for a minute. Give yourself a mini test. It only lets you do one. Did you check to hit the check mark at the bottom? Because once it says correct, it should pull up a new question. All right, I'm going to refresh my page so I can. Okay. Yeah, in order to get the next question, you have to decide. All right, I'm going to go through all of these with everybody because sometimes these things work and sometimes they don't. All right, levels of organization. So mine just started over. All right, so that one was the biosphere. All righty. All right, then we said the living things along with their environment are the ecosystem. Oops, drag. All righty. All the populations that live in a defined area is going to be community. A group of individuals of the same species in the same area. So that's it. And these definition parts are very specific and they're very important. So they have to be in this of the same species in the same area, and they would be considered a population. Okay. A living thing is an organism. All right, groups of organs that work together for the same function would be an organ system. And it's always, whatever this is, if it's working with others, then it's a system. All right, a group of different tissues working together. And that's going to be tissues make organs. And cells eventually work together to make tissue. They're kind of going backwards on this. Started with the organism, then it went to organ systems, then it went to organs, and now they're down to the basic unit of structure, which is the cell. So cells make tissues, tissues make organs, organs make organ systems, and organ systems make an organism. Specialists have specialized functions are organelles. All right, a large complex molecule essential for life is a macromolecule. And we said those were the carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids are considered our macromolecules necessary for life. All right, different atoms that are chemically bonded together are molecules, such as H2O. Basic unit of matter. Now, this is non-living, so it's a basic unit of matter is not a living thing. Macromolecules by themselves are not living things. We didn't get to be a living thing until we got to a cell. So cell is the basic unit of structure and function for living things. All right, so hopefully you were able to go through that. If you weren't, it simply wanted you to put all of this whole list of things basically was what that drag and drop was testing. All right, let's move on. All right, so they talk about ecosystems. Ecosystems, again, include abiotic and biotic factors. So our biotic factors are all of the living things in that particular area. We're always talking about a particular area. So the two areas that they're giving you to look at right now are Tybee Island, which is a coastal. Tybee Island is off the coast of Georgia. If you've never been there, it's beautiful. I highly recommend it. And then the Blue Ridge Mountains. So we have a mountain environment and we have a coastal environment that ecosystem that we're looking at. And we're going to look at the fact that they're going to have totally different plants and animals that live there. The soil type will be different in those two locations. And I wish I could. I've been twice. Excuse me. But we are going to look at, so it asks you, what do they have in common? All right, so what they have in common, other than both being vacation spots, is that they both have plants and animals that live there, but they have very specific plants and animals that exist there. There are certain things that like to live near the water. There are certain plants that exist near the water. And then this water is ocean water, so it's salt water. So there are certain plants that thrive on that type of atmosphere as opposed to the ones that grow on a mountain. Okay, we have sandy soil here. We have kind of dirt soil over here, and trees. And trees are not going to be over here on the beach. So that's what's going to make them different. All right, let's see what, and I'm going to try to see if I need to slow him down on this one because he talks way too fast. Okay, there we go. Slowed him down. Might actually understand what he's saying.
There's a lot of ideas that we just assume that we know a lot about because we hear about them all the time. For instance, I know what pop music is, but if you were to corner me at a party and say, Hank, what is pop music? I'd be like, it's It's like the music that plays on the pop station. Just because we're familiar with a concept does not mean that we actually understand it. Ecology is kind of the same way, even though it's a common everyday concept, and ecosystem is a word that we hear a lot. I think most of us would be a little stumped if somebody actually asked us what an ecosystem is, or how one works, or why they're important, etc. I find it helps to think of an ecosystem, a collection of living and non-living things interacting in a specific place, as one of those magic eye posters for those of you who were sentient back in 1994. An ecosystem is just a jumble of organisms and weather patterns in geology and other stuff that don't make a lot of sense together until you stare at them long enough, from far enough away, and then suddenly a picture emerges. And just like with magic eye posters, it helps if you're listening to Jamiroquai while you're doing it. So the discipline of ecosystem ecology, just like other types of ecology we've been exploring lately, looks at a particular level of biological interaction on Earth. But unlike population ecology, which looks at interactions between individuals of one species, or community ecology, which looks at how bunches of living things interact with each other, ecosystem ecology looks at how energy and materials come into an ecosystem, move around in it, and then get spat back out. In the end, ecosystem ecology is mostly about eating, who's eating whom, and how energy, nutrients, and other materials are getting shuffled around within the system. So today, we're setting the record straight. No more not understanding how an ecosystem works, starting now. So ecosystems may be a lot like magic eye posters, but the way that they're not like a magic eye poster is in the way that posters have edges. Ecosystems, I'll just come out and say it, no edge. Only fuzzy, ill-defined gradients that bleed into the ecosystems next door. So actually defining an ecosystem can be kinda hard. Mostly it depends on what you want to study. Say you're looking at a stream in the mountains. The stream gets very little sunlight because it's so small that the trees on its banks totally cover it with shade. As a result, very few plants or algae live in it, and if there's one thing that we know about planet Earth, it's that plants are king. Without plants, there are no animals. But somehow there's a whole community of animals living in and around this mountain stream, even though there are few plants in it. So what are the animals doing there, and how are they making their living? From the land, of course, from the ecosystems around it. Because no stream is an island. It isn't there all by itself. All kinds of food and nutrients and other materials drop into the stream from the trees or are washed into it when it rains. Leaves and bugs, you name it, flow down from neighboring terrestrial ecosystems. And that stuff gets eaten by bigger bugs, which get eaten by fish, which in turn are eaten by raccoons and birds and bears. So even though the stream's got its own thing going on, without the rest of the watershed, the animals there wouldn't survive. And without the stream, plants would be thirsty and terrestrial animals wouldn't have as many fish to eat. So where does the ecosystem of the stream start and where does it end? This is a perennial problem for ecologists because the way it works, energy and nutrients are imported in from someplace, they're absorbed by the residents of an ecosystem and then passed around within it for a little while and then finally passed out, sometimes into another ecosystem. This is most obvious in aquatic systems where little streams eventually join bigger and bigger waterways until they finally reach the ocean. This flow is a fundamental property of ecosystems. So at the end of the day, how you define an ecosystem just depends on what you want to know. If you want to know how energy and materials come in, move through, and are pooped out of a knot in a tree that has a very specific community of insects and protists living in it, you can call that an ecosystem. If you want to know how energy and materials are introduced to, used, and expelled by the North Pacific Gyre, you can call that an ecosystem. And if you want to know how energy and materials move around a cardboard box that has a rabbit and a piece of lettuce in it, you can call that an ecosystem. I might tell you that your ecosystem...
All right. They stopped him again. All right, an ecosystem. So we had a definition earlier, and they are reiterating that right here. So again, up to the point of hierarchy, we only talked about the living parts of it, but now we want to make sure we are looking at the interaction between all of the living organisms, plants, and animals, with the abiotic, with the non-living things that are in that particular space. So biotic factors are the components that are living. They include the bacteria, the fungi, the protists, which are the single-celled organisms, the animal life that is found in a specific area. Abiotic factors are whatever is defined and in the space, and they include but not limited to the water, the air, the minerals, and the sunlight. The sunlight is most important. All the energy in any system gets its energy from the sun. So all of the plants in that area are very important because they are the ones that capture the sunlight energy, and all of the energy for that particular ecosystem start with the plant life. So they're very important. Okay. And then we're looking at how do these plants interact with the animals? How do those animals interact with the non living resources? Are they in and this is where we get competition, because all the living things need to compete for the same water, soil, sunlight, what else? Minerals and space. You know, they want, everybody wants to have their own space. So this is where competition comes into play. But they interact in such a way that they get along. So interaction of organisms in a given space is an ecosystem. All right, I'm going to skip this little film here, but we want to look at this. So this whole, the whole planet has been divided up into several ecosystems. So I want to give you a few minutes to click on each one, starting at the top, and it will give you the name of the ecosystem. Now notice it's color coded so that you know that things that are of the same color are in the same area. So you're going to have a tundra over here, but you're also going to have tundra over here because they're the same color. They're on the same geographical location on the planet. Okay, let's take, I guess, I'm trying to get that orangey color in the middle there. Taiga. All right, you're still kind of cold, but you're not frozen with a taiga. So Canada has taiga. Okay, that should be this, not the orange, but the kind of yellowish orange area. And then you have temperate deciduous forest. That's where we live. Okay, but Japan also has temperate deciduous forest. So if it's color coded the same color, that means even though it's in the same geographical location on the planet, so they will have similar climate, and they will have similar organisms living in that area. Let's look at the green one. Right, that's your tropical rainforest. So we had our temperate deciduous forest, which is kind of dry, but then the tropical rainforest is moist. So they have, and we have one here. We have one in Africa. We have them in the Middle East, not the Middle East, Asia. They call that Asia area. All right. So we need you to just take a few minutes to look at our map. So we have a desert there. We also have a desert. Right, well, grasslands there, but we know we have deserts in Africa and the little regions that are. Let's see what this one does. All right, so that's the desert there with that coloring. But you have some other spots for deserts. You have some deserts in the middle of Europe, Asia. You have deserts in Australia. So it depends on where they are on the planet. And look at that, out down here in the middle of the ocean, you have a temperate deciduous forest. All right, so they're color coded. So take a minute to look through these. It says download the background. You should do that. All right, you should do this. So download this, and it gives you that same map without being able to touch it the same way. And it gives you, notice the location. It gives you climate and rainfall. That's how you describe a biome, by climate and rainfall. And later on, I'm going to show you how to read a map that is set up. It's called a climatograph that is designed to give you the annual climate and rainfall. They tell you about the soil, about the nutrients in the soil. So the type of soil will determine what kind of plants grow there. And then it tells you the animals in each area. So take a look at this in the time that's left. Okay. And get to know what these biomes are, and then get to decide which one that you would like to explore, because again, your project is going to be a biome project. So you're going to be expected to pick one and give a little discussion about that. So again, download this. So let me back up a little bit in case you were asleep. All right. Underneath this map, it tells you it might be helpful you to have a handout. It is helpful you have a handout. So please click on that so that it pulls this up, and then download this map. Okay. And then read it over. And I don't know whether yours is blank like mine. This is what I mean by sometimes these things are blank or they don't work. Mine is not working. So does anybody else have anything in this space that's working? Or is it just me? Okay. All right, take a look at the handout. Stay there for a minute. Hopefully all those who were taking the test took the test. I want to stop sharing so I can check on that. If you were trying to submit something else and you weren't able to, let me know. Fix that right now as well. All right, Kingsley, is there a reason why I don't have, is it Kingsley? Never mind. Never mind, Kingsley. I'm looking at the wrong space. It's Jatavius. Are you working on your test? Because I don't have a test score for you. It was a very short test. The next day, the 9-week test will include some of those questions as well as the ecosystem questions that we're about to do. So again, make sure you download, because you're going to need that. That's going to help you as a study guide. So please do download that worksheet and then read it over. All right, so we're going to start with the next unit next time, which is aquatic ecosystems, and take care of that at that time. Are there any questions for today? Any thoughts? Any one thing you want to share? All right, if not,